Good afternoon, everyone. I am Kusum, studying second year MSc Food Science and Nutrition, Yuvraja College, Mysuru. I am going to speak on the topic standardization of fermentation time of sorghum millet-based dokla. Fermentation is an anaerobic pathway in which glucose is partially oxidized to form acids and glucose. In organisms like yeast, the pyruvic acid formed by partial oxidation of glucose is converted to ethanol and carbon dioxide. This process is often used to produce wine and beer, also employed in preservation to create sourness in the food product by producing lactic acids. The products are pickled cucumber, kimchi, yogurt, and many more. The science of fermentation is known as zymology. Fermentation results in the production of ATP molecules, which are more in the aerobic pathway than the anaerobic pathway. Types of fermentation are lactic acid fermentation, alcohol fermentation, acetic acid fermentation. Sorghum millet. Sorghum is a crop from the Gramineae family and as a scientific name, sorghum bicolor. It is a staple crop for millions of semi-arid residents. It is also known as the king of millets. Its main ingredient is starch, which is digested more slowly than the other cereals and has low protein and fat digestibility. These crops are still the principal source of energy, protein, vitamins, and minerals for millions of poor people. The health benefits of sorghum are they helps to reduce diabetes, obesity, gastrointestinal tract disorder, hypercholesteremia, and many more. Dokla. Dokla is one of the food having its origin in the Gujarat. It is a steamed savory cake made with the fermented batter of rice and lentils. The batter is steamed in a cake mold and then topped with the tempering made out of spices and curry leaves. It is liked as a snack all over the country because of its unique mild sour and the spongy texture that is being consumed during the tea time. As a natural fermented food, the desirable sensory qualities are attributed by microbial activity. The functional inoculum are added and left overnight for the fermentation. Comes mainly from the substrate. The microbial succession during fermentation. A diversity index calculated across the 24 hours of fermentation revealed that the bacteria diversity are greater in the early stages, that is up to 6 hours of the fermentation. Thus, the fermentation process is divided into three time clusters: 0 to 6th hour. Constitute the fermentation phase, while 9th to 12th hour constitute the fermentative phase, and the post-fermentative phase comprises the remaining time. The microbiota associated with the fermentation of the dokla batter comprises the Leuconostoc mesenteroids, Lactobacillus fermentum, Candida species, Streptococcus faecalis, Torolopsis candida, and many more, and Torolopsis pullulans. The lactic acid bacteria, which is also very common, it is lactic acid bacteria are responsible for the development of characteristic dokla flavor, while the yeast produces the folic acid, raises the batter volume, and gives the sponginess to the product. The physiochemical properties of the dokla due to fermentation. It normally takes 12 to 15 hours to obtain a batter fermented at ambient temperature. Simultaneously, gas production takes place with an increase in the batter volume and reduction in the bulk density of the batter. This leavening effect is due to the action of heterofermentative organism. In normal batter, at the end of 12 hours, the pH decreases from 6.3 to 4.5 pH and the volume increases by 100% due to the leavening activity of the microbiota. The leavening of the batter is associated with the development of a pleasant acid flavor indicating fermentation. Our objective is to create the millet-based fermented product and to evaluate its organoleptic properties, to optimize the fermentation type, and to develop low gluten and glycemic food. Raw materials which are obtained to prepare the sorghum millet batura were procured from the local market. Statistical analysis used is the Holm-Siddak method. Sensory analysis was evaluated by using semi-trained panelists, and they had used hedonic scales consisting of 1 to 9 scores. Proximate analysis was conducted by standard AOSC methods in triplicates. Preparation of dokla. To prepare the dokla, the sorghum millet and Bengal gram dal was soaked for 4 hours. Then, after 4 hours, they were grinded into a fine paste, and water was added to adjust its consistency. Then, salt and curd was added to it and left for fermentation for 12 hours in an anaerobic condition. After fermentation, the After fermentation, a pinch of turmeric, baking soda, and chili paste was added to the batter, mixed well, and cooked in a cake mold for 30 minutes. And after cooking in the steam for 30 minutes, the spongy dokla is removed from the mold and had cut them into cubes, and they are tempered with the seasoning like mustard seeds, asafoetida, green chilies, curry leaves, and we had created the sweet version of dokla, so sugar was added to the temperings. And this tempering was poured into the mixture of the this tempered mixture was poured onto dokla. The formulation of dokla. So my formulation, 0% of the formulation here, we had not incorporated the sorghum millet. Instead, we had only used Bengal gram to produce to prepare the dokla. While in 20% we had used 20 gram of sorghum millet and 80 gram of Bengal gram dal. Keeping other ingredients as constant, we had only varied the composition or the proportion of the sorghum millet and the Bengal gram dal. The sensory evaluation of the table, dokla prepared using the varying the proportion of the sorghum millet and the Bengal gram dal. As we can see, as we see, the sorghum millet dokla prepared using 40% of millet had more high acceptability than the other variation in terms of flavor, color, texture, and overall acceptability. It had soft and spongy texture and mild sour flavor, but sour flavor. Sensory evaluation table of dokla prepared by varying fermentation time. Here we had vary the fermentation time to see the optimum fermentation in which the product will be produced in a perfect condition. Time was varied from 6 hours, 12 hours, 18 hours, and 24 hours. At 12 hours, we had obtained a optimum fermentation time. Here, the appearance and color was good, and texture was soft. Taste it was also good, and flavor it was mild sour, and it had not. It didn't have the excessive sourness. Whereas in 24 hours, the sourness was excessive due to the over fermentation, and in the 6 hours it didn't have a much fermentation sourness due to lack of fermentation time, and we couldn't see the leavening of the batter due to the lack of fermentation time. The nutritional composition. When we had analyzed for nutritional composition for the variation sorghum millet dokla 3, which had consist of the 40% of sorghum millet, when compared to the standard, moisture was decreased and carbohydrate content was also decreased. Carbohydrate content was decreased. Protein content was increased because sorghum millet has a more protein content, and fat was also increased. As we can see, the carbohydrate content decreased and fiber content increased. It makes the low glycemic food. Iron content was also increased. This is the picture of the dokla prepared. First picture indicating the dokla prepared by varying the composition, and the second picture indicates the dokla prepared using the varying the time of the fermentation. Conclusion. The standardization of the fermentation time for selected variation resulted in the more acceptability in terms of sensory attributes with maximum score for 12 hours. The sorghum dokla of 40% had high acceptability in terms of sensory scores, whereas 80% and 100% had least acceptability. As a result of poor fermentation, 6 hours had lowest sensory scores, and the last variation was also not good due to hyperfermentation. The proximate analysis of nutrients in selected variation of dokla had significant increased level of protein, fat, dietary fiber, and iron. The optimum fermentation type for sorghum incorporated dokla was found to be 12 hours. These are my references. Thank you.